you ever considered that we are living in a unique time, that something world-changing is about to happen, and that it might concern you? If so, you're in the right place. Keep listening, and you'll hear thought-provoking views behind the news that point to a new and better future for all. Many people now sense that humanity is not alone. So consider this. If the Christ or the Buddha walked among us today as modern men, would we recognize them? What would they be saying? And most importantly, would we listen? Every Sunday on this program, Share International Radio, we'll examine extraordinary events that are unfolding behind the headline news. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for. And now, welcome to this week's show.
Diana Gold-Holland, broadcasting today from what is a sunny day in Vancouver, Canada. Yesterday, however, we had torrential rains for that, and as I was out doing my business, I was feeling very, very grateful for the people in Alberta, the next province over, who 3 weeks ago were literally praying for rain that did not come. Our topic today is the great Fort McMurray fire that is still raging there. It is a huge fire, and before we introduce our guest, Yvonne Sherban, I would like to just give you a sense of what that fire is like, and Yvonne will fill us in on the details. The television networks in the first days of the fire, May 3rd, tearing through a small town in Northern Alberta called Fort McMurray. The TV coverage was preempted for at least 2 days straight. And I'm looking now at Maclean's Magazine, one of our foremost national publications, and the pictures, I tell you, are absolutely horrific. There are just walls of flame that are at least 100 feet tall, just total walls of flame. The blackness in the sky, the cars trying to rush ahead of the fire to evacuate the town. It is just a catastrophic situation, very, very dramatic pictures. And I just want to read you one tiny description in Maclean's of what it was like to be in that inferno at the time, as people were trying to get their cars out to safety and evacuate to other towns. Here we go. Here's a few lines of description. The smoke gets so dense you can't see the car in front of you. The flames move faster than you can run and easily leap over every road, river, fire break, or lake in its path. They burn so hot that the air in front can be 800 degrees centigrade, instantly drying the trees ahead. The flames create its fuel as it goes, and the trees can burn so quickly they crack and explode. A large forest fire can generate its own weather and wind systems and blow embers far ahead. And indeed, there are reports of people driving in convoys out of town with debris falling all around them, interior temperatures of the cars getting up to 50 degrees centigrade. Now that's African, very hot African weather in Fahrenheit. I don't know the exact numbers. At all events, the fire is still burning. It is somewhat under control, but it has now leaped over to the next province, Saskatchewan. But let me not tell you all of this. We have with us today Yvonne Sherban. She's in the social services arena in Edmonton, and she is our guest today as an eyewitness to the evacuation that occurred into Edmonton, where she lives. Fort McMurray is about 4.5 hours drive from Edmonton, and Edmonton is just possibly the biggest refugee center for this catastrophe. So, without further ado, let me welcome Yvonne. And welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you. Good to be here, Diana.
Okay, listen, set the scene for us. What was the fire all about? Give us the proportions.
Well, it has grown a lot from the beginning. It has now over 500,000 hectares, which would be, what's that in miles?
Well, it's square miles and whatnot.
It's over. Pardon me. It's over 1 million acres in size now.
Okay. Put that into the size of a town for us.
I guess in terms of an American town, it's about 3 times the size of Chicago and double the size of LA.
Right. So these are huge fires. For our European listeners, this would be just about the size of Luxembourg at this time. So what happened was that the complete town had to be evacuated in front of the flames that surged very rapidly. Apparently, slightly before the great surge, you needed a subtle eye to detect that this was an important fire. The only clue was that the birds were just off kilter that morning. But then the wind shifted and the tornado just took off, and so the town had to be evacuated. So you're an eyewitness, Yvonne. You were there. Tell us what happened. How did the evacuation go from Fort McMurray?
Well, my context is more in terms of being in Edmonton, where evacuees were received.
That's right.
And so my first involvement was when I arrived to work in the morning. That would have been probably, I think it was the 3rd of May. And there was, my coworkers were just buzzing about talking about this evacuation that was taking place. My office mate had already had communication with friends from Fort McMurray who were evacuating. She had to leave for work before they could arrive to her place in Edmonton. And so she just merely made arrangements with them to leave her house unlocked so that they could just enter when they arrived, since no one could be there at home. And she said to them, help yourselves to whatever you need. Have a shower, help yourself to food, whatever their needs were. And I thought that was very generous. It was wonderful to hear that, she was offering that to them.
Right.
And so initially they did come with a motorhome, and there was actually 3 families who were related, who were traveling together with everybody else evacuating at the same time. It was slow moving. It was bumper to bumper. People ran out of gas along the way. There was groups.
Let me fill a little bit of that in for our readers. The total number of people that were evacuated all at once were about 90,000. And
yes.
the drive from Fort Mac to Edmonton is about 4.5 hours, right?
Right.
Yvonne?
Right.
Now, I heard that, yes, people were running out of gas, but I heard, in fact, they showed some of this on TV, that laid off workers and even a Muslim organization in the smaller towns around there and other places not yet affected, they were driving out towards the people coming away from the fire so that they could provide them with gas and water, and so that those stranded cars could get back on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so you
amazing.
had traffic going both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that the oil companies were flying people out. There are 10 very large tar sand oil companies located in that area, and they were flying people out in convoys over the four days as well.
Yes, especially their employees
Mm-hmm.
in the camps. Initially, when people were evacuating, some went north, but most went south. And the ones that went north, they were taken in by 2 communities in particular. One community took in about 8,000 evacuees, and another took in something like 5,000. But those communities eventually had to be evacuated as well. And so those areas, as well as the camps for the oil workers,
Mm-hmm.
those people, I understand, were mostly the ones who had to be airlifted out.
Right.
And were assisted by the Canadian Forces to do that.
Yes, the military came in and helped. And just so people will know, one of the harrowing things about this is that, this is in very dense bushland in the northern part of the province. So essentially there was only one main highway out of town.
Right.
And everybody had to use that same road. So that was one thing, I've got to say, that amazed me. When you could see on TV, they had aerial shots, and you could see, like, the cars were just flowing along in total organization. They looked like dinky toys. Nobody was tripping the gun. People were letting people come in when, merge in and stuff like that. It was absolutely remarkable, the actual calm and orderliness that prevailed, given the fact that, there was debris falling all over the place, and people were thinking their tires could even melt.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was really it sounded like quite a calm evacuation. Certainly there was no lives lost. People cooperated with each other, and everybody got out safely.
Yeah, exactly.
Even pets, animals, there may have been some who got left behind, but I understand many pets did come with them.
Yeah, there was a particular care for pets, but I'm sure, as you say, there were even some kind of sad photos of some dogs in the rubble of their houses waiting for their owners to come back. Mm-hmm. And I heard a couple of sad stories about people who had horses, the kids who had horses, and they couldn't get them into a trailer to take them away in time. So all they could do was open the paddock gate and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. So, and in fact, one of the things that they're thinking about now is, in the wake of this, is to have even a pet preparedness strategy the next time something like this comes around. So they've learned a lot from this evacuation. Yvonne, stay with us, because we want to ask you about the rescue setup that was made in Edmonton when we come back, and we'll hear about
the best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Share International Magazine is unique in the world today. It draws connections that make sense between headline news and spiritual changes unfolding now on a global scale, and explains the forces driving those changes. It may be the message of hope you have been waiting for. Investigate for yourself at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
Hey ladies, do you want to have that good hair day feeling all the time? Gentlemen, would you want your special someone to have that glow, letting you know she's feeling completely satisfied? This feeling and that glow can be yours by embracing your sexual power. So join me, Rachel Kenley, award-winning romance author, on the O-Spot. The O-Spot will guide you to that peak with guest interviews, book discussions, and conversations on the thrills of sexual empowerment. Put the zing back in your life. Come up and see me sometime on the O-Spot, live on Hump Day at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Live with medium Lisa Phoenix, Mediumship Messages and Musings, explores mediumship and all things metaphysical. Lisa Phoenix invites you to reach above and beyond your everyday experiences to explore new dimensions in the spirit world. She will do live readings to connect callers to their loved ones in spirit, shares engaging stories and teachings from her own personal experience, and will have intriguing conversations with other mediums, spiritual teachers, and healers to help you understand the metaphysical world so you can connect to these forces in your day-to-day life. Join your host on this magical and metaphysical journey into the world of spirit every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
Welcome back to our audience and our guest, Yvonne Shervan, who was part of the rescue setup in Edmonton, Alberta, where the 90,000 refugees, people were being evacuees. Sorry, that's right. Evacuees were being evacuated too. So the Expo Registration Center, Yvonne.
Yes. There was actually it was a reception center set up in our city fairgrounds, and that's where they invited people to come and register. And those who needed a place to stay were given a place to stay there in the reception center. So initially there was a lot of people staying there, and then gradually the numbers reduced. Of course, volunteers were needed to look after the needs at the center. And initially there was about 150 volunteers, and that grew very quickly to about 1,000 volunteers. And so at this reception center, not only were people registering to say that they were there, they had gotten out of the city of Fort McMurray safely. They were given shelter. They were given any tangible products that they needed, food, whatever,
a lot of which was coming
clothing.
In as donations, right? From the locals.
Most, if not everybody, they left with the clothes on their back. I mean, some people had a chance to grab a few things, but really very little. And so they basically, you've used the word refugee a few times, but yes, they were essentially refugees in their own country, having to leave their homes with just what they could take with them.
Now, Edmonton has a good reputation for volunteerism, but when we were getting the show ready, you told me that something surprised you. Do you want to tell our listeners?
Yes, initially the whole response of the city was very normal. To me, it was like, well, of course, people stepped in, organizations, individuals. They came and they did what they could. But the part that surprised me was when the Alberta government actually issued preloaded debit cards. And they issued $1,250 for every adult and $500 for children.
So this was to tide people over with initial expenses and resettling and that kind of thing.
Well, just for their immediate expenses while they were displaced before they could get back into their homes. And the target is to start going back in June 1st. However, that is not totally certain. So this little bit of money was to tide people over.
Right. And the CBC News was reporting that the government was also fast-tracking applications for unemployment insurance so that people could get
the federal
set up.
Government,
yes, that's right.
Yes. And then the Red Cross had received many, many donations as well from individuals, small amounts, large amounts. And they were also issuing funds, $600 for adults and $300 for children. And the federal government was matching what the Red Cross received in funds. So their funds multiplied.
Right. And we know that the hotels I heard were offering free rooms and even pet care. And you were telling me about a restaurant.
Yes, there was one restaurant that we went to that same week when all of this started. And it was their monthly buffet. And they were offering free takeout for Fort McMurray evacuees. And I kept seeing that anytime I went anywhere in the city. To grocery stores, to restaurants, takeout food outlets. They were offering opportunities to donate money to the Red Cross, as well as discounts or free food for Fort McMurray evacuees.
Right. Okay, let's get to the most shocking news in all of this. let's talk about the casualties.
I don't think there were any. There was just 2 people who were killed in a motor vehicle accident on the way while they were evacuating.
Well, actually,
it was a highway.
Right, I was sort of misleading us here because the shocking casualties was that there were no casualties. In fact, the whole exercise turned out to be pretty miraculous. Why don't you give us some stats on how much of the town was saved and all that kind of thing?
About 85% of it, from what I understand, was saved. So it was really a small area that was burned.
Yeah. Now, that I found really, as I said, miraculous, because you could see this wall of flame, right? And yet the flames themselves seemed to cut a certain swath through the town, and you would have, for example, you'd see on TV certain areas where it was complete rubble, like right down to the ground rubble, and then 2 streets over, the neighborhood looks absolutely normal. Mm-hmm. And apparently it was 85% of the town saved included all of that key infrastructure, like the hospital, the water treatment plant downtown, all of those things. And I read another statistic today that 2 of the major communities, Yvonne, around Fort Mac, housing approximately 2/3 of the population, both of those were largely intact. So it's pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm. There are people who have homes to go back to when they are given the okay to go back. There's people who don't have homes to go back to, and they will need to decide whether to go back and whether to rebuild. There's also people who have jobs to go back to. However, there's also people who don't have jobs to go back to. So there's all those very possibilities for different people depending on where they worked and where they lived.
Right. And I think you were telling me that there's only about 230 people now in Edmonton who are still remaining on the University of Alberta campus, that almost all of those other evacuees have found places.
Well, actually, those numbers are in the initial reception center. Mm-hmm. I know a volunteer who was there right from day one and has seen the numbers go down. So from thousands of people in there initially, it's down to just 200 or 300. And those people are primarily people who don't have anywhere to go. Right. Most of the people had family or friends that were located whether in Edmonton or in Alberta or elsewhere in Canada. So they had places they could go to stay with people on a temporary basis. Right. The ones left behind are the ones who are not from, generally not from Canada. They're immigrant workers, migrant workers. Right. And so they're the ones who are still being looked after in the evacuation center, the reception center. Mm-hmm. And the University of Alberta created a reception center as well, and I'm told that was about 1,000 people there.
I see. Okay. Now, if we step back and look at the big picture here of this, despite all these miraculous savings, and including the $100 million that was raised by the Red Cross in donations. $100 million in donations, so quite a lot of those donations, $5 and $10 from ordinary Canadians in the rest of the country. So I think that's all pretty remarkable as well. But if we look back at the lesson of this this conflagration, Yvonne, what's your take on that?
Well, I think it's things like maybe we could individually be better prepared for emergencies like this. I think some people have realized that having a plan at home, having a little takeaway bag or something that they know to grab in the event of an emergency, just like when a woman goes to the hospital to deliver a baby, she's got her bag prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned already a pet preparedness plan for emergencies. Things like that. And perhaps maybe we need to take better care of the planet as well and look more seriously at the effects that we are creating on the climate. Even though fires are a natural cycle, they appear to be increasing in more recent years.
Yeah. That's
in Alberta in particular, we've seen more fires than we've had.
Right.
More frequency and more larger areas.
Right. In fact, I found a blog that is going to go up on our Facebook page, Share on the Air Radio, that people can go and read. It's a prognosis of where we might be 40 years down the line if we continue in these ways, and the increase of the severity of the fires, and the also the number of fires and the length of the fire season grows astronomically. So we're really up against it in those terms. People have accepted the reality of climate change, and this situation is right in the middle of it. It is the weather. This is apparently the fourth consecutive really bad year for fires in Alberta, and the weather conditions of short winters and the driest spring in decades was this year. So all of this due to climate change. So we really need to be looking at that. And of course, you had your flood in Calgary last year, and we see this pattern also repeating all over Europe, severe droughts elsewhere. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we need to be looking at. Stay with us. We'll be back on the other side of the break. And this is Share on the Air Radio, thought-provoking views behind the news. See you then.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Did you know that Share International Radio is more than just a podcast? If you're hungry for thought-provoking views behind the news, there may be a Share International event happening soon near you, providing a spiritual perspective you'll find nowhere else. To locate an event in your area, visit shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Eros Evolution is where sexuality and spirituality meets. Join me, clinical sexologist Martha Tara Lee, on Eros Evolution on Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. I am with Yvonne Sherban, and we're talking about the Fort McMurray wildfires raging here in Canada. We're going to take a bit of a turn here because we want to try to tie this story into a very important, much important principle that's happening now in terms of human awareness and adopting new lifestyles so that there is more justice and more help for all these situations where we have evacuees, refugees, and many other of these intractable problems in the world, including the environmental issues that are getting worse. There are three major premises to our show, Share on the Air Radio, and they are hopeful ones. Number one, that we, humanity, are not alone, that we have help of an extraordinary time at this extraordinary junction in human and world history, and that form comes to us in the form of very advanced teachers, perfected masters of wisdom, as it were, who are here to counsel and guide us through this perilous transition for Mother Earth. Now, at the head of this group of perfected masters, great enlightened teachers, stands Maitreya, Lord Maitreya, Maitreya, and who is also the embodiment of the Christ principle on the planet at this time. He is the returned Christ for the Christians, the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, the Messiah for the Jews, the returned Buddha. He actually, Gautama Buddha, the previous Buddha that we know, predicted that a new Buddha would come in such a dark time for humanity and restore the path of righteousness. And that Buddha has come. It is Lord Maitreya. But he is here primarily as a teacher for all of humanity, not as a religious figure in any sense of the word. He's here as a teacher, as a modern man concerned with modern problems, such as the ones that we are talking about now. Now, he has a recipe for solving the situation, which is totally simple and totally feasible, and that is the principle of sharing. Maitreya's priorities are adequate food, shelter, housing, and education for every single person on the planet. Those are his priorities from his great point of evolution as this great teacher. Simple priorities, but that will allow all of us as human beings to discover and develop our creative side, our spiritual side, once those things are taken care of. So he talks of those priorities for humans, and he talks of the environment being the number one issue as well in terms of the planet. So the principle of sharing is what he advocates to get us out of our mess. He says that sharing is divine. With sharing, we recognize the divine. We recognize ourselves, and we recognize the divine in our brothers and sisters. And so that's the way to go. When we were preparing this, Yvonne, you were telling me that you had found, in a way, that there is a gift to this experience. I found that very profound, and I'd like you to share that idea with our readers.
What I experienced in the first week after the fire started, I think it was actually the first day that mandatory evacuation took place. That evening, I was at a store, and they had the television on, and I happened to catch the news right at that time when we were there waiting to be served, and the news was all about the evacuation and images of the fire, and I watched that, and then my attention was turned away for a few moments, and I turned back to the television, and I continued watching, and there was images of houses that were abandoned, and I thought that was still part of the Fort McMurray news story. It turned out it was not. It was about people from Syria who had to abandon their homes. And it struck me just immediately that this is the same thing. It's really not any different. The people from McMurray had to leave their homes. They didn't want to, but they had to for, reasons of the fire. Same with people from Syria. They had to leave their homes for different reasons due to the war raging.
Right.
But in both cases, they were displaced. They became refugees. The difference is here in Canada, we are able to help those people in our own country. In Syria, there's nobody to help them in their country. And all the more reason why the rest of us in the world need to step up and offer that assistance. And it's wonderful that is happening. Many countries are taking in Syrian refugees, including Canada. And so to me, that the gift part was seeing that connection. And my thought at that time was, I hope others see that too. That they are also brothers and sisters.
And of course, Maitreya says exactly that. Take your brother's need as the measure for your action and save the world. So that was a pretty profound experience of oneness that you described, Yvonne. And, it's what excited me when you were telling me about this is that this idea of sharing is not just some abstract principle. As you say, Canada and other countries are taking in refugees. I think Germany welcomed a good million of them, a good million Syrians last year. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just a principle.
Yes, exactly. And it's wonderful to see sharing our resources in action. That's what I see happening here with the assistance being offered to the evacuees. Is people are sharing whatever they can. People are seeing the need and stepping in to fill the need. Also, in some cases, people are expressing their need and people are coming forward and helping to fill that. For example, there was a couple who were planning to be married that same weekend right after they had to be evacuated. A wedding company came forward and offered them all they needed to have their wedding. Mother's Day happened right after this, and Flower Shop decided to bring flowers to the evacuation center, to the reception center, so that children and husbands could offer flowers to the moms.
Yeah, it's so often it's the small comforts that end up meaning a lot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so in those small ways, but also in the big ways, people were taken care of, and people shared what they could. I have some involvement with the Sai Baba Center here in Edmonton, and the Sai Baba Center stepped forward and housed 30 families and offered free meals daily for people to come to the center. And eventually that changed to then using the money they would have to purchasing items and donating items to the center that's receiving items.
Right. So the point is that the sharing is doable. It can be done. And it's being done right now.
Exactly.
These principles of Maitreya are being implemented now by people who, as you said, were jumping in with no hesitation. I mean, there are countless stories.
Exactly. There's people donating their time, their money, their talents, doing whatever they can. Children having lemonade stands to raise money. Very, little ways, big ways, as you say. But the point is that people are stepping in and contributing whatever they can, sharing what they can to fill the need of the people who need our assistance at this time. With Fort McMurray, it's a temporary assistance for most people, if not all. with people from other countries like Syria, perhaps other places, their need is more long-term. Mm-hmm. But this, to me, is a snapshot of it sharing in action and perhaps a prototype for what's possible in the world. We can do this worldwide and share our resources. The have countries sharing our resources with the have-not countries so that all have their needs met.
Yes, one of my favorite sayings in Maitreya's teachings is this one, and I'd like to just share it with our listeners. Maitreya says, "Allow me to show you the way forward into a simpler life where no man lacks, where no 2 days are alike, where the joy of brotherhood manifests through all men." And certainly that was what we were seeing on TV. Mm-hmm. And in these stories, these countless stories we're reading. I mean, that girl who got her wedding dress, they showed her, and she was just boundless gratitude. I mean, people were really, really, really sharing and from their hearts and having that experience of oneness. It was really special. And I'd even like to say a word about the media, who is often reviled or sensationalist. Our media was absolutely sterling during this whole initial reporting. The respect they had, the kind of people they were bringing on to interview, the conclusions they were allowing people to come to, the way that they really encouraged this solidarity. There was nothing treacly or sicky sweet or sentimental or anything like that about it. It wasn't even very dramatic. It was all people to people, just we're all in this together. And that is this divine sharing that Maitreya is talking about. When we come back, we'll talk a little more about unity and diversity, which is one of the great themes of the world of one with Maitreya.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Now there's a book about UFOs that stands out. British author Benjamin Creme has worked directly with the Space Brothers and writes about their spiritual mission in The Gathering of the Forces of Light, a truly inspiring book. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
What if living didn't have to be so serious?
What if you could move beyond your problems with greater confidence and ease than you've ever imagined?
Throw your labels out the window and join the Irreverent Therapist for practical tips and a very different way of approaching the changes you would like to create.
Marilyn Bradford
and Pam Hodling
have empowered hundreds of people to come out of self-judgment, quit looking to experts, and begin to create the lives they desire.
Join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Irreverent Therapist Show.
What if business could be fun? What if business is the adventure of living? What are you choosing? Where do you do business that makes it easier, more fun, or more joyful for you? We'd love to see where you do business. Connect with us on Instagram at Joy of Business or Twitter at Joy of Business. And share your pictures with hashtags BusinessDoneWhere and Joy of Business. Let's change the world with business.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, Join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. Here we are on already our fourth segment. I can't believe it. Just as we start out, I want to sound a note of gratitude for the opportunity that this program is to share all of these ways in which Maitreya's priorities are being implemented. Every week on the show, we have a different facet, either of his teachings or his priorities, or the emergent story itself. So you're welcome, of course, to listen to our archived shows, which you can find either on iTunes or as well if you go to the OMTimes radio site and go to our own share on the radio page, you will find all of our shows archived since the program began last October. And if you are new, I would draw your attention specifically to the first two programs, because there you have the complete background story about Maitreya and his gradual emergence onto the world scene, his priorities, his concerns. The whole story is there in a fascinating interview with our first guest, Dick Larson. So you are very much welcome to go and listen to those. Another resource I want to bring your attention to, again, if you're new, is Share International Magazine, which has been tracking the progress of Maitreya's emergence and also ways and means in which his priorities have been developed. And since 1982, the magazine has been out. You can read an abridged version on the Share International site, which is www.share-international.org. One of the, and of course all of this information is presented for your consideration only, but interesting information it is, and you're welcome to explore to your heart's content. One of the things that has fascinated me in following this story since the early 80s is the actual care and involvement of these great masters and Maitreya in the lives of ordinary people. And one thing that they do is they do appear, they are actually very often in disaster sites. And this gets reported in Share International Magazine. Do you want to fill us in a little bit on that, Yvonne? I think I've been talking for too long.
Well, just in general, yes, they've appeared in various crises that have occurred around the world, and I'm sure they were present here in Alberta with this crisis that we've experienced. One example that was given to me is a couple who were evacuating from Fort McMurray, and they had planned to take along an older woman who was there living in Fort McMurray by herself, and they had made arrangements that they would take her with them when the time came to evacuate. However, the mandatory evacuation order occurred very quickly, and they were not able to connect with her before they had to drive away. However, they tried to reach her by phone, and as they were leaving the city, they did manage to reach her by phone, and when they were talking to each other, "Where are you?" and I'm here, and next thing they knew, there they were at the same intersection.
So the car side to side.
Yeah, and that was quite miraculous because like people were all leaving, everybody was trying to get out, and all of a sudden here was this person at a traffic light right next to them that they were trying to find so they could take her with them and the rest of the journey. Right. So yes,
what are the odds of that, eh? Pretty miraculous.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
If you go to the Share International Magazine site, you will find stories that Maitreya was present at Fukushima, the nuclear meltdown in Japan. He and other masters have ministered to people during earthquakes, all of these great tragedies. And also, because of Maitreya's wanting the peace and justice and equality for all the nations of the world, all the people of the world, he often appears at the peace marches and rallies that are so extensive all over the world today. So if you go to Share International magazine, you can see stories of his appearance even in symbolic form in places like Tahrir Square during the Arab Spring, where he appeared as a ghost-like image of the white horseman that is quite symbolic to Muslims. So there are many, many stories like that, and you're very, very welcome to check out these appearances. We're getting close to the end of our time, and one of our big themes today was the fact of this unity and diversity. According to the stats, there are over 80 mother tongues are spoken in Fort McMurray, and it's kind of become the face of the world because of over 75 nationalities represented there. I'd like to draw your attention in terms of this diversity to a book called Unity in Diversity, The Way Ahead for Humanity, which is a small book by British spokesman Benjamin Creme, that's C-R-E-M-E, Creme de la Creme. Mr. Creme is and has been for decades now the major spokesperson on this story of the emergence. He is in direct contact with Maitreya and also some of these other great teachers. And he has put out, I think it's 17 or 18 books now talking about their ideas, their principles, how these things are working out in the world, and also guidance for the formation of this new civilization. So Unity in Diversity is the way forward ahead for humanity is one of these very good books where Creme explains the plan of these teachers for us, the divine plan for the betterment of all humanity. He shows how we are at a crossroads and with a major decision to make, either to go forward and create this brilliant new civilization or perish utterly. So you can see information about that book on our Facebook page, and there are 4 books there that you will see illustrated that you can download free on the website share-international.org. So much to do there in terms of follow-up. Yvonne, we're coming close to the end of our time. Do you have some take-home points that you'd like to make for our listeners as we wrap up?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to make a couple of examples of unity and diversity in action in this Fort McMurray evacuation as well.
Great.
So there's a couple of evacuees in particular, people who helped evacuees, that I'd like to highlight. So a fellow with his family who experienced Hurricane Katrina and now lives in Canada, in the Edmonton area, for about 5 years now. So as soon as the evacuation took place in McMurray, he immediately jumped on the bandwagon and became a volunteer to assist the people who needed assistance, knowing what they needed, having had that experience himself with the hurricane.
Right.
Also, there were some Syrian refugees in Calgary who got together and raised money to buy products that Fort McMurray evacuees would need. And they've only been in Canada 5 months.
Wow.
And to me, that are really good examples of how you never know who's going to need the help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It can go either way. The receivers becoming the givers in this case, previously being receivers. And it's come full circle for them.
Yeah, and so it's what goes around comes around in a good way.
Exactly. And also, there were many situations of people who have opinions, I guess, who prefer that the oil sands not exist, but put aside their political differences and came forward to assist the people on a human level who needed the assistance.
Yeah.
So putting aside ethnicity, putting aside political positions, putting aside whatever their sometimes gets in the way,
mm-hmm.
and putting all that aside and just helping people.
So they say that adversity brings out the best in people, and we certainly have an example of it here. But I would be happy when we see this happening, not the disasters, of course, but this sentiment of oneness and the sharing and goodwill. We can do this.
Exactly, and I think we need to extend that to our homeless and our own communities too.
Absolutely. You were telling me about your thoughts while gardening this week.
Oh, yes, about the fact that here I was doing my normal activities, but the people who are displaced, they cannot carry on with their normal activities that they would do. And for some it's temporary, for others it's a bit longer term. And hopefully all lives can carry on and resume their whatever that fulfills their needs.
And that this spirit of oneness continue. Already we're having our exit music going. It's been too short a program yet again, but we'll be back again next week. My co-host, Cielito Pascual, will be here with you with another facet of Share on the Air radio, thought-provoking views behind the news. Have a good week. Bye for now.
Bye.